Today, we're diving deep. We're going past the numbers to get to the real story, the one hiding in your data. It all comes down to answering one single, powerful question. Why? So, yeah, let's get into it. Hey, everyone, and a huge welcome to the Flow Tao Salon. I'm so glad you're here with us. Today, we're on a mission to find that deeper meaning, the stuff that's usually hiding in plain sight, right there in our own data. All right, so let's get right to it. Here's the thing. You probably have tons of data, right? Charts, graphs, they're great at telling you what your customers are doing. You see the clicks, the purchases, the visits. But those numbers, they leave out the most important part, the why. Why did someone pause before clicking buy? What made them choose that option instead of the other one? And that review they left, what was really behind it? That's the exact mystery we are going to solve today. And to solve that mystery, you guessed it, we have to go beyond the numbers. It's all about finding that human story, the one that's just waiting to be discovered right behind all those statistics. So this really breaks it down perfectly. You've basically got two worlds of data. On one side, you have the quantitative stuff. That's the world of numbers, counts and measurements. But on the other side, you have qualitative data. And that is the world of conversations, stories, and just human experience. Okay, let's dig into that a little more. Quantitative data, that answers the what questions. It's all about the numbers, the things you can measure. Think of it like a crime scene investigator just counting the pieces of evidence. But qualitative, that's what answers the why. It's all about the words, the meaning, the context. This is where you become the detective, actually interviewing the witnesses to figure out their motivations. So yeah, to put it simply, one counts, the other interprets.
Okay, so if we're putting on our detective hats, where do we even start looking for these clues?
Well, the good news is these clues are pretty much everywhere. You can do in-depth interviews, right? Talk to people one-on-one and just hear their stories. Or you could try direct observation. Just watch how people act when they're in their element, without asking them anything. And hey, don't forget about all the existing stuff, like reports and websites. There's a whole story already written down if you know where to look.
All right, so you've gathered all your clues. You've got interview transcripts, notes from your observations. Now what? How do you actually piece it all together to solve the case? Well, turns out there's a pretty straightforward 5-step process for that.
First up, you got to get organized. Just get all your data in one place. Then you start digging in, reading through everything to spot interesting concepts and ideas. Once you have those, you start grouping them together into bigger themes. Now, this next step is super important. You have to validate your results to make sure you're on the right track. And then finally, you put it all together and interpret the full story. Let's zoom in on a couple of these steps.
So let's talk about step 2, which is all about something called coding. Now, don't let the word scare you. It's not what you think. This is the absolute foundation of your analysis. It's really just a simple act of tagging your data. A word here, a sentence there, with a little label that sums up the main idea. You're basically creating little sticky notes for all your clues.
Honestly, the best way to think about it is like using a highlighter. You're just going through your notes and marking up all the bits that jump out at you. Maybe you use yellow for one idea, pink for another. Each color is like a code. It's a super intuitive way to start seeing patterns pop out from what looks like just a big wall of text.
Okay, look at this real-world example from Susan Masioki. On the surface, it's just a sentence, but it is packed with meaning, isn't it? You could slap a bunch of codes on this. Late delivery, maybe planning conflict, or even resourcefulness. Do you see how much story is hiding in just a couple of lines? That is the power, the richness of this kind of data.
But okay, a fair question. How do you know you're not just making stuff up? How do you know your interpretation is actually correct? That's where step 4, validation, is so key. We use a cool technique called triangulation. It's exactly what a detective does when they check a story with multiple witnesses. You're doing the same thing with your data. Do your interviews line up with what you observed? If you had a colleague look at it, would they see the same patterns? This is how you make sure your insights are solid and reliable, not just your own personal take. Okay, so we've gone through the detective work, we've gathered the clues, we've solved the case. Now for the really fun part. Let's talk about how all of this turns into a genuine business superpower. I'm going to break it down into the 3 big ones, the 3 most important ways you can put all this insight to work. First up, and this is probably the biggest one, is what I call the power of why. It's all about getting to the real root cause of why your customers do what they do. Think about it. When you know why someone gets stuck at checkout, you can actually fix the problem. When you know why they keep searching for a feature you don't offer, well, you know what to build next. Understanding the why is what lets you stop guessing and start knowing. And that leads to way better products, much smarter marketing, and just an all-around better user experience.
Superpower number 2 is the power of pattern recognition. And remember all that coding and theming we talked about? This is the payoff.
Suddenly, you can take what looks like hundreds of random individual comments and boil them down into just a few key themes. That's how you spot new market trends way before your competitors do. That's how you turn a messy, chaotic pile of user feedback into a clear, prioritized to-do list for your team. You're not just putting out fires anymore. You're looking at the big picture and making strategic moves. And that brings us to our third and final superpower, the power of validated insight. This one is all about one thing: confidence.
Because you did the work, you triangulated your findings. You can invest in that new product with real confidence, knowing that it solves a real, verified problem. You can launch that marketing campaign because you know the message is going to hit home. This is what turns risky, high-stakes gambles into smart, well-informed strategic decisions.
So at the end of the day, it's so important to remember that behind every single data point, every number on your screen, there's a human story. And what we've talked about today, qualitative analysis, it gives you the tools to actually listen to those stories, to understand them, and to make smarter and frankly more empathetic decisions. So the only real question left is, what stories are just waiting for you right now in your data?